And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, December 31st, the final day of 2024. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by DK. We're brought to you by us, and we'll have a lot to talk about for things that we have to offer you guys. But we only have a 4-game slate today. Weird one, 3 o'clock games today for reasons that honestly don't make a ton of sense to me. I don't know why this happened, but we have 2 games going on right now. They don't matter. We've got 4 games tonight, and that is what we will break down. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. DK, what's going on, man? Happy New Year.
Yeah, happy New Year, man. Pretty solid 4-game slate to end the year. It's kind of crazy that it's almost like the biggest news that we're waiting for is the status of Yuki Kawamura. But we'll talk about that more. But yeah, hopefully we'll close out. Hopefully close out the year on a strong note.
Yeah, that's there's not much like hanging in the balance right now in terms of news. We pretty much have everything, but I mean, I guess LeBron technically will be important, but I just kind of assume he's playing. So
Yeah,
it's, I don't know. He's got to play against the Cavs, right? That just happens.
I think he's playing too. It was an illness, right? Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, I'm pretty sure he's playing.
Just out of curiosity, when do they play again? Okay, they play Thursday, so they are off tomorrow, and they're at home again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
he's playing today.
he missed the game. That was four days ago, or wait, Saturday's game. So 3 days ago. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure he's gonna play.
I assume that he is as well. So that's the one we're waiting on. That and Tim Kawasaki or what? Yuki Kawamura.
Woo!
It's close. That was close. Who's who's the Kawakami? Man, I don't even know what guy I'm picturing right now, but not that guy. I don't know the dude on the Grizzlies in any way. But we don't have to talk about the Grizzlies first. We got to talk about the Clippers and the Spurs. And the Clippers are 3.5-point dogs in San Antonio, 217 total. I was actually kind of expecting to see one of the Clippers dudes out based on the line today, but that did not happen. So we have the Clippers here at, as full strength as they generally are. Still no Terrence Mann, Kawhi Leonard coming soon. 15% ownership on DraftKings to James Harden, around 15 for Norm Powell, around 15 for Chris Dunn, and then Ivica Zubac's got north of 20%. That's basically the same range that these guys are in on FanDuel. After that, you get a slow trickle to Derek Jones Jr., Amir Coffey, KPJ's got a couple percentage points. How are you feeling about the Clippers here? Because I kind of like them a little bit more than the public, but it's more of the guys that aren't getting love.
Yeah, I think they're going a little bit overlooked as well. Zubats right now is getting the most ownership, 7.7K. I think is a reasonable price point for him. The minutes been really solid in competitive games. He's pushing high 30s minutes, 36 minutes in back-to-back games for Zubats. So, and I think they're going to need him obviously defensively against Wemby. So, assuming you can avoid foul trouble, I think Zubats is a pretty solid center play. Some of the value plays I do think are a little bit interesting here for the Clippers. Obviously, I think the Grizzlies value is probably better options, but like Derek Jones Jr. is 3.6K. He's getting sub 10% ownership. He has played decent minutes over the last couple of games, 30 and 32 minutes. So I think he's a bit of an interesting contrarian value. Again, the Clippers ran a 9-man rotation last game. Mo Bamba backed up Zubats, and then you'll see like Batum play a little bit, but obviously I don't think you can get to him. So yeah, I think Derek Jones Jr. is a reasonable contrarian value option. Also, the minutes on Chris Dunn have been solid of late too. Like the Clippers for a long stretch are just being involved in so many blowouts. So like you never really saw what the rotation would look like in a competitive game. But like last couple games are done too, 34 and 32 minutes. He's only 4.2K. So I think both those value plays are solid in Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. And then as far as the other main guys go here for the Clippers, you got Harden and Powell, 9.3K for Harden. I think it's going a little bit under owned right now at about 14% ownership. Norm Powell, 7.4K, I think is a totally reasonable play in the mid-range. He's playing massive minutes. Like in competitive games, he's averaging like 40 minutes a game. Over the last 5 games, 27, 20, 20, 22, and 19 shot attempts. So Shooting guard, small forward eligible. I think another pretty decent play there. I don't think I would get to anyone else. Like Amir Coffey at a similar price point to Derek Jones Jr. I just feel a little bit better about the minutes for Derek Jones Jr. I mean, Kevin Porter Jr. is getting very low ownership. He's 4.3K. I think I would just rather get to Dunn, even though Dunn is getting a little bit more ownership. But yeah, overall, I think the Clippers are a pretty solid tournament team. I think some of these pieces are going to be a little bit overlooked.
I'm totally with you. You basically hit on every point that I would have hit. I think Harden's a little underowned. I have his optimal rates a bit higher than the ownership. I'm more than happy to get to Norm Powell. Great positional ability, and the minutes ceiling is certainly there. Zubats just looks good for a 4-game slate where you're going to want him out there, and he's good anyway. Happy to get to done with these increased minutes. Derek Jones Jr. would have been the guy that I pointed out as somebody that I think is a bit underowned. I have him 14% optimal, 25% likelihood of hitting 24 fantasy points, which is where I set his target for this slate. So he, to me, is underowned and an interesting pivot off of all that wealth of Memphis value. I don't love Amir Coffey. I do lean more towards Derek Jones Jr., but I wouldn't just not click Coffey's name. And then there's at least some upside to KPJ because he's such a good per minute guy. The minutes have been a little weird, and he's been falling into a little bit less lately. He played 16 last time out, but we're not too far away from a 27-minute game. If he gets to 22, 23, given the fact that he's a good per minute guy, that's not crazy on a day like today, but I don't think he profiles amazing. But I wouldn't mind it. Batum is sort of the dude where it's like, we're going to need something real special out of this guy for it. But the rest of these guys look a lot better than I ever expected. And I was kind of surprised to see that Jones Jr., Coffey, Porter Jr. trio be as low owned as they are. Not that they should be like soaking up ownership, but felt like a hair lower.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these guys, like you said, are all pretty solid contrarian pieces and good pivots off like the Memphis chalk.
Oh boy. I don't know what is going on with my AirPods today, but it is incredibly annoying.
Are they like cutting out or what?
Now, like sometimes every once in a while, and I think it's one of the new features in the AirPods, and I just don't know what I either need to change or not change. Anytime I hear more noise going on like outside of my office,
Mm-hmm.
they get a little bit louder, and then when that goes away, like I can hear them get softer.
Oh, okay.
Like it's compensating for background noise, and I would really prefer if it just stopped doing that shit.
Yeah, there's probably a setting you can like turn off that, I would
I
assume.
mean, I click on the settings right here and I see 3 different options of stuff I can do, and then a whole new section that says settings. So it could be anywhere. Doesn't seem like now is the time for me to try to figure it out. Now is the time to talk about the San Antonio Spurs and Victor Wembanyama, who's $11,600 today, up to 14% ownership now. That was quite a bit lower when I did the strategy show this morning. Now I think he's properly owned. We're also getting 14% ownership to Chris Paul. Now I think he is underowned. And then we've got 20 to Sohan, 20 to Vassell, and north of 20 to Keldon Johnson. Let's start with Wemby first, and then we'll talk about the rest of these idiots, because obviously Wemby looking a little bit different. He's got like twice the salary of anybody on the Spurs. How do you feel about getting to Wemby? And is he your preferred pay up today? We also have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 11K and Anthony Davis at 10.9. Those are your 3 guys north of 10K.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think like all like the 3 guys above 10K are all like slightly overpriced, but we also just have like so much value that it's kind of almost forcing you to get to one of these guys. So I think if I had to pick between the 3, it would be Wembanyama. The minutes have been very solid for him in competitive games. If you just look at like the last 4 games, 36, 40, 35, and 37. So yeah, I really like the ceiling here on Wembanyama. I like that the ownership dropped too. I noticed that he was a bit more popular earlier. 14% feels reasonable. So yeah, I think of the 3 spend ups, it's Wemby for me, but that's not by like a super wide margin.
His ownership must be on a journey then, because when I had it this morning, it was like 4.
I thought it was maybe I was seeing things. I could have sworn it was higher when
Oh, wait, I mean,
in the
the
morning.
next run after that could have been
Yeah,
higher for sure. Like, I didn't see anything post strategy show until now. So if you saw it in like the mid afternoon, we were looking at it at two different times. But definitely a bit of a roller coaster. Look, all we care about really is what it is by the time we get to lock. That's
right.
the one that matters the most. All right, Sohan and Vassell, two comparable guys here. Should both be in the starting lineup. Similar price tags. Do you have a preference between the two?
Hmm. Um, I'll say Vassell, but it's close. Again, those two also have seen an uptick in minutes. Like the Spurs have been running a bit of a different rotation of late. They're leaning on the starters a lot more than they have in the past. So I think both those guys are solid options. 6.4 for Sohan and 6K for Vassell, and they're both coming in similar ownership. I'll say Vassell, but again, I think they're pretty reasonable or pretty similar plays, I guess.
Yeah, I have them almost dead equal. Um, Slight lean to Sohan, which I would never have expected, but I would prefer the opposite direction. Dude, the Celtics just beat the Raptors in the second half 80 to 36. They won
Well,
125 to 71.
like I saw in the first like 6 minutes, it was like 5-2 or something. The Raptors are winning. I'm like, what is going on? Um, wow,
Scotty
yeah.
Barnes was minus 39 in 31 minutes.
Ooh, I'm just looking through the box score. Yeah, that's an ugly game.
Dude,
Ugh.
you know it's bad when everybody that played for the Celtics, which is 13 guys, all but one of them was double digits in plus minus, and Jaden Springer was plus 6 in 6 minutes. Jordan Walsh was plus 17 in 12 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. That is
I mean,
I mean it's not surprising. I was surprised when I first looked at it and I was like no one is scoring. The Raptors are keeping it competitive, but yeah, 125 to 71, that feels about right.
yeah, when both teams take 43s and one makes 22 and the other makes 10, you're going to have a hell of a time running that down. Oh, by the way, one team had 21 turnovers, the other had 13. Oof. Tough one there for the Crafters. Okay, we got to talk about a value play here. So we'll get to Chris Paul in a second.
Yep.
Small forward, power forward eligible Keldon Johnson is 3,500 and 23% owned. Do you like that value? Because I could go either way there. I'm just a little surprised it's as high as it is.
Yeah, so like I think he's a solid point per dollar value. I think he's maybe going a little bit over owned. Like we talked about the
Yeah.
Clippers, like on the opposite side, like is Keldon Johnson like that much of a better play than Derek Jones Jr.? Like I don't know. I think they're relatively similar. Again, the minutes have ticked down a lot on Keldon. But yeah, so I think he's like a totally reasonable value you can get to, but maybe going a little bit over owned as it stands right now.
I mean, if you ask me, I have Derek Jones Jr. as a better play than Keldon Johnson.
Hmm. Yeah, and he's coming way less owned too.
Yeah. Like, I would comp Amir Coffee closer, as weird as it sounds.
Hmm.
That could be a minutes problem for me too. But I mean, if we're talking about Keldon Johnson, 17 last time out, 27 the game before that, 18, 22, 21. Like, if he's just getting 17 or 18 again, that is not fun. You're really banking on the 21, 22 to feel a little bit better about this one. I'm
Right.
expecting him to be like 18% owned or something like that, and it won't look as crazy, but 23 stood out. That's the most of anybody on the Spurs right now.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy. And again, this is like an early game, so you have a lot of good value with Memphis too. And like, do you want to
Yeah,
lock? How many spots do you want to lock up in the early game too? So that's another thing you had to think about as well.
absolutely. So Chris Paul is actually the guy that grades out the best for me. Highest optimal, best boom score, 14% owned. I would like to have, north of 20, upwards of 30% here. He'd be a guy that I would pretty easily be over the field on. You liking Chris Paul here? Because I'm intrigued by the fact that he's just playing a bit more.
Yeah, I like the minutes increase. Again, the minutes have ticked way down on like Stephon Castle. So the assist numbers have been solid for Chris Paul. Like over the last 5 games, he's averaging 15.4 potential assists per game. And again, with that minutes increase, like I think he is looking at the ownership right now. I think probably him and Wemby are my two like favorite plays factoring in ownership. I just think he's going a little bit overlooked for the amount of minutes that he's playing. And again, with the slight role change, I guess, with just like the minutes decrease for Stephon Castle and the slight uptick in assist numbers for Chris Paul. So yeah, I'm in agreement. I think he's a pretty good play here in the mid range, 6.3K. I think he's going overlooked.
Do you think, based on the way that they're running these rotations, that they're just kind of like going for it this year?
Well, what's their record right now? Because that's like I never like know like, any of these teams' records. So they are 16 and 16. Yeah, I mean, where are
It is kind
they
of funny
in
how much we
the
don't really care about the ultimate
right?
victory or loss in any individual game. It's
Right, like you
meaningless
were
at
you
all.
you were talking about like teams' records in the last show. I'm like, I had no clue. Like the Pelicans only had 5 wins. Like I had no idea about that. But yeah,
Yeah.
they're like technically in the playoffs right now. Yeah, I mean maybe they are going for it. I wouldn't be super surprised. This is a fun team though right
Yeah.
now. So
I mean, if I'm them, I'm willing to make any deal at the deadline that is also future
mhm.
forward. Like, you don't have to go out there and make a move. I wouldn't just get somebody to get somebody. But if you go out there and get some 26-year-old wing or something that fits into this team in the Harrison Barnes spot, like, yeah, spend some assets. They got a shitload of picks coming up. If you can get somebody in now, get somebody in now. Make the team a little bit better. Get somebody in there to understand like how that works with Wemby. So if I'm them, I'm super active at the deadline. I wouldn't be going after I wouldn't have been throwing my hat in the Dorian Finney-Smith ring at all, like the Lakers did, but I'm guessing they could let it rip and try to grab somebody. I mean, I don't know if they're looking for bigger fish, or maybe a bigger fox potentially, but it's got to be something out there they can do. I mean, they can basically get anybody in the league if they wanted to. Like from a fit perspective,
Mhm.
nobody's blocked. Like you can get if you wanted a new point guard, you can get a new point guard. Chris Paul's clearly not going to be there forever. You want a shooting guard, you can get a shooting guard. You want a small forward, you can get a small forward. The only spot you're not replacing is Wemby. So
Yep.
shouldn't be that hard to find something. I like the Spurs.
I know. Yeah. It'll be very, very interesting to see what they do in the next year or two.
Kyle in chat said Spurs should trade for Russell Westbrook. I hear he has a positive winning record in his career. Don't do that to me, man. Don't get me started. It was bad enough that I had to wake up and see that he had a triple double, and I knew everybody's going to lose their minds for the next day that I talked.
What happened? Were you talking shit about Westbrook
I
or something or
spent
what?
15 minutes on the strategy show yesterday, absolutely eviscerating him from a real basketball perspective, and then he
Yeah.
obviously went out there and hung a I didn't miss a single shot triple double.
Well, I mean, yeah, like he will do that from time to time, but he's not a good real life basketball player at this point in his career.
Yeah, he apparently he took that message personally because
I think so.
he smushed that one right in my face yesterday. Now, obviously, different messaging. I did recommend him in DFS if it helps, but boy, oh boy. I knew it the moment I did it in the morning. You all should have just immediately ran to the books and started betting triple doubles and overs and everything because I spoke that one into existence.
I wish
Yeah,
you would have did
amazing plus minus. It was brutal.
I wish you would have did that a few slates ago. I played him so in the Millie Maker, I swapped off a lineup that was that would have cashed because we got that news that that Westbrook was starting and he was like super low owned. So I pivoted to prioritize to get him in.
Yeah.
And he just did like nothing. And of course, like the next few games, he's just been like smashing. Like that's just so typical.
Apologies for not being able to talk about it. Yeah, I just saw Chris Cross in chat said, I called it. When you talk shit about a guy, they always go off no matter the sport. So somebody needs to make a Twitter account about this because
For
I
sure.
think you should just tail the things that am definitively confident about. Anyway, schedule for the rest of the day. There's not a lot going on. Lie Before Lock is coming up next, and then that's it. All of y'all, go enjoy yourselves. It's New Year's Eve. I'm sure you have plans. There's a lot less people in here right now than there normally are because it's New Year's Eve. So we're going to kick it off tomorrow, get into 2025 in the good way. But be safe tonight, everybody. If you're knocking them back, get an Uber. No driving. We don't want to hear any of that stuff. I don't assume you wanted to talk about Harrison Barnes or Champagne or Trey Jones or Castle or anything like that. I figured we were good to go on in San Antonio.
Yeah. No, not with the minutes recently with those guys. No, I don't think I can do it.
Alrighty. So next one up is going to be the Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the OKC Thunder. Wolves are 6.5 point dogs, 217 total. And this is pretty par for the course, although the ownership for Minnesota is a little bit more spread out than I was expecting. 23% to DiVincenzo, just north of 15 to McDaniels, Reed, Randall, all in that same range. Edwards, Gobert, and Conley, all in like the 5 to 8% range. I think these guys are all way closer. Like, yes, I think DiVincenzo is the easiest guy to get to, and I'm not surprised to see that ownership. But you give me any one of those seven guys, and I basically think they're the same play relative to salary. Do you have anybody that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, when this team is fully healthy, it's usually the same story for me. Um, no, I don't think there's a standout play here. But I think like all the main guys are reasonable like filler options. Again, DiVincenzo is getting the most ownership, and I understand why that is happening. Last few games, the minutes have ticked way up for him, 37, 34. Like this is the DiVincenzo Minnesota thought they were going to get when they signed him. So he's been playing a lot better, more aggressive offensively as well. Potential assists have been up too. So shooting guard eligibility as well. Yeah, a totally fine value option. Really bad spot against Oklahoma City, but I understand why he is getting some love. And then McDaniels and Naz Reid and Randall all in like the low to mid teens in ownership. Again, no real super strong takes there. Gobert, I think, is maybe going a little bit under owned right now, sub 10% at 6.4K. You would think, in a competitive game, he's probably pushing for, mid 30s minutes, assuming he can avoid foul trouble. So I don't hate him as a contrarian center option on a 4-game slate. So reasonable play there. And then Ant's getting very little ownership. Again, really hate the matchup. Don't know if I'm even going to go there, even with low ownership. The minutes have ticked down on Conley. He's not getting much love either, but I just don't think it's necessary to go there on this slate. So, I think I agree with the field that DiVincenzo is the easiest guy to get to, but any of the other main guys are fine options as well. Gobert, I think, going a little bit overlooked.
Yeah, I agree with the Gobert shout. He was 13% optimal for me, 30% boom at a 36 fantasy point target, 8% owned. I can certainly see this one working out well. I like McDaniels just because he's a small forward. If he continues to get that like 30 minutes, it's not a great position today on this 4-gamer, so I could understand that path. I don't mind Ant. I think we just have like different versions of him on some of these other teams, whether that's, like Jalen Williams on the opposite side is a little bit more owned, but nothing crazy, but they're both in the same price range. So even just looking at it like that, I could like Ant, but I just need him to win in this 1v1 in his own matchup more so than all the other like potential 8K guys that exist, like the Cleveland dudes or, some of the guys from the Suns now if Booker is back. So I just kind of find these Minnesota dudes the same all the time. I mean, listen to these optimal rates I have for their main 7 guys because Nickeil Alexander-Walker just doesn't appear to be that guy anymore. 13, 13, 12, 16, 14, 12, 13. Everybody between 12 and 16%. I'm having a hell of a time trying to sift between these guys. So I would probably just end up a little bit heavier on Edwards, a little bit heavier on Gobert, and like relatively equal to the rest of these guys. But DiVincenzo with an MPE and a $4,600 price tag, increased minutes as of late. I'm not surprised to see him be the leader with the ownership. Oh my God, did you see his price on FanDuel?
No, what is
He's
it?
unowned on FanDuel. He's 6K.
Oh, that's like a major increase. They must have just like saw last couple games. I'm like, oh, we're gonna price him way up.
He's $400 cheaper than Gobert on FanDuel, and he's $1,000 more expensive than Naz Reid.
Wow.
That's one way to do it, FanDuel. Ken says Josh always likes McDaniels. You're not wrong. He is a thorn in my side for some reason. Even across models and over the course of a couple of years, I don't disagree. But 4-game slates when you need to fill the small forward position is different. If I'm recommending him on an 8-game slate, just ignore me. On a day like today, it's slightly different. You don't need as much.
Yeah, he's a frustrating roster. Like I feel like whenever I roster him, he's always in foul trouble.
Yeah, dude, I don't think I've ever gotten a recommendation of him correct.
Mm-hmm.
It's It's really irritating. And then when he has his games, he has his games. It's always some like there it is. December 13th, 18 points, 9 boards, 7 stocks. If he does some bullshit like that today, you gotta have him. Like that's a lot, man. I have
Yeah,
his
you'll
target
get
score at
like
26. That's like 40 fantasy points.
it's like he's usually in like the 15 to like 25 fantasy point range for most of the time, and then you get the one pop off game like once a month or once a month or two.
Yeah, it's those crazy stock outliers. Actually, the next day he did 12, 11, an assist, and 4 steals. Like even that's a dub for today in a big
For
way.
sure.
But if I roster him, it's usually the day where he has 8, 6, and 2 and no stocks. It's like, all right, well, you
Yep.
suck.
I'm with you there.
What do you like for OKC? Because the public doesn't seem to care about him at all. 11% ownership to Case and Wallace, 10 to Shea. Everybody else in single digits. Nobody jumping off the page for me, at least.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement with the ownership here. Nothing really standing out. I mean, the prices have just ticked up in the main guys, right?
Yeah.
Like SGA for a majority of the year has been like the low 10K range. He's 11K. Hartenstein was like, high 6 to low 7K range. He's 7.9K. J-Dub was usually in like the low 8K range. He's 8.9. Plus, again, low total against Minnesota, solid defensive team. So, not saying you can't get to these guys, but I'm not really going to prioritize any of them. Case and Wallace right now getting the most ownership of 4K. Like, it's fine. He was on pace, or he played 30 minutes last game. Could have played a little bit more if the game didn't blow out, too. But again, like, do I want to, put my trust in one of these Oklahoma City value plays where I know, like, the minutes are just never secure? Like, if he struggles, I can just very easily go to someone more off the bench. So, yeah, no one really getting much ownership. Kind of in agreement there. I don't think there's really much else to add. Like if you wanted to take a shot on like one of those value plays in large field tournaments, I think it's reasonable. Like Isaiah Joe or Aaron Wiggins, those guys do have ceilings, but I just think with Memphis, we'll talk about in a bit, there's just much, much better value.
Yeah, it's almost like Memphis is missing a couple dudes today.
Maybe like
Never had
half the
that
team.
experience. Yeah, never had that experience before. I mean, they have 7 legitimate 10-man rotation guys out today.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's bonkers. Bonkers. Yeah, I don't like 15% optimal to Shea was my high mark. I think he to me is my least favorite pay up. Not that I don't like him. I do, but I would prefer Wemby and prefer AD before I got to Shea. But like, Jalen Williams to me looks almost identical to Anthony Edwards in terms of projection and upside. So that's tough. Neither one of them are getting any ownership. Dort, I guess, is like kind of interesting. Should he really be that far away from someone like Dante DiVincenzo in ownership? Probably not. I think those guys are probably a little bit closer than it seems, but we're just talking about like marginal adjustments for OKC. We've got much better spots to talk about, and I know we're going to have to invest some time in that Memphis team.
For sure. Yeah. So, yeah, just pretty boring team, to be honest.
All right, folks. We got one more NFL regular season week to go. And you guys can celebrate that week still by using the promo code CELEBRATE, $179 to get our NFL Sims Max package for the rest of the year through the Super Bowl. So everything that we have to go for this coming weekend, games on Saturday and Sunday, and then leading into the playoffs. I mean, I think there's games 3 or 4 straight days over that first weekend. I think at least one game on Monday. So you're going to have crazy weekend slates and showdown slates, and that's not going to stop all the way until February. So if you want to get in, the deal still exists, and it will exist moving forward. $179 covers you for everything we have: projections, ownership, Sims tool, Discord, whatever you're looking for in the NFL side. This will cover you. And all you have to do is click the link in the description, or potentially, if you drop that link in chat, Jordan, they can click that one too. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 5-point favorites in LA, taking on the Lakers, 228 total. Cleveland is at full strength. I actually thought they were going to sit Max Strus today. They did not. So they're just typical Cleveland. And typical Cleveland, we know what we're getting here. Around 10 to 15% ownership on Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, and Allen. Nobody else getting any love whatsoever. I don't think those four guys look the same. I think three of them do. And then I think Jared Allen is on his own tier. But any one of Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley, I am more than happy to have them. And I actually think these guys are under-owned as well.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I like this team a good amount for tournaments.
Yeah.
I think this is probably my favorite team to target for tournaments looking at the ownership. The thing with Cleveland is they're such a good team that they just blow teams out almost every single night. So you rarely get a game where these guys are, have a competitive game. But like 8.4K Donovan Mitchell, getting a little over 10% ownership. I really like his upside against the Lakers. Evan Mobley is 8K. He's been playing a lot better of late. Was dealt with some foul trouble last game, so I wouldn't be super worried about that. His potential assists have been up as well, which has kind of raised his floor. He's right up there with like Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland over the last 5 games as far as potential assists go. So wanted to note that 8K for him. I think is a decent price point. You mentioned Darius Garland as well, 7.2K. Another totally reasonable option. He's gone for 40 plus fantasy points in each of the last 4 games. So yeah, I like Mitchell, Garland, and Mobley a good amount more than the field right now. Jared Allen at 6.5K. A little bit more like indifferent on him.
Yeah.
Assuming Anthony Davis plays, I think that, or is Anthony Davis probable? Or is he still? Oh yeah, he's probable.
Yeah, he's just active now.
Okay. So yeah, I think Jared Allen will probably play, assuming he avoids foul trouble, around 30 minutes. I think there's other centers I'd rather get to, but not saying you can't go to him. And then looking at the value for Cleveland, I do think LeVert is at least a little bit interesting as a contrarian play. He's 4.7K. He's got shooting guard eligibility. He's usually playing low 20s minutes or so. Could get extended a little bit. This game does stay competitive. So I think he's viable in large field tournaments. But Mitchell, Mobley, Garland, I think are all really good tournament plays.
I can't even separate them. They all look basically identical. So, and I like all of those guys more than I like Jalen Williams or Anthony Edwards. Like I lean more to Cleveland than I do to any of those pieces from that previous game. I don't really have much interest at all in Dean Wade, LeVert, Strus, Niang, Merrill. I mean, they've got just too much, and those guys are spread a little thin now. I like Dean Wade, but I like him a lot more as a real life basketball player than I do as a DFS option for today. So, I mean, Cleveland's just really simple to talk about. And knowing the Cavs, they'll blow out the Lakers, and all these guys will play like 29 minutes, and nothing will be all that interesting. It seems to happen constantly. Then we get to the Lakers. Now, the LeBron James news is important. He is questionable. The Gabe Vincent news is interesting-ish if he plays or not, but it might not matter in any way. And let's not forget, D'Angelo Russell, no longer on this basketball team. Welcome to Los Angeles, Dorian Finney-Smith. Welcome to Los Angeles, Shake Milton. LeBron James is projected for 25% ownership on DraftKings. AD is at 15. Nobody else is in double digits. I just want to state right now, I agree with the LeBron James ownership. And I think Anthony Davis is the best pay-up option, and I think he's under-owned today. He would be my priority if I was getting to just one of those pay-ups.
Yeah, I like the shot there in AD. I think he's going a little bit under-owned. I wanted to ask you this. So when this team is fully healthy, what do you think the starting lineup should be? Because I think that their probably best bet would be Reeves, Christie, LeBron, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Anthony Davis, bringing like Rui off the bench. I wanted to hear your thoughts on what you think like the Lakers should do with the starting lineup.
It's tricky. It's tricky. Let's just do this. Obviously, Reeves, LeBron, AD, unassailable. Those three are locked in stone. I do think Dorian Finney-Smith should play over Rui. I also am not a big Max Christie guy.
Okay.
He seems like the easiest guy to not have out there. It sort of just comes down to shooting. I would probably want that to be Dalton Connect. I don't know how well that's going to work. I think that he would be someone that would get up more threes than Christie, at least a little bit. Ultimately, I want it to be none of those dudes. And I think that would be the best thing that they can do. But I think what you said is the most likely scenario moving forward. I think
Okay.
Rui's going to lose that spot to Dorian Finney-Smith, and then I think it's going to be Reeves, Christie, LeBron, and AD.
Yeah. I just think that that makes the most sense. And then like Rui can provide like some scoring off the bench. Um, but yeah, I mean, for DFS, at least on this slate, assuming LeBron plays, I think it's kind of hard to get to these like secondary pieces with
Yeah.
Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton both active. Like, who knows how many minutes those guys are going to play? I don't think I can take shots on DFS or Shake Milton off the bench at 4-5 and 4-4. So yeah, like I think it's really hard to get to any of these value plays. Obviously, that would
Yeah.
completely change if LeBron James gets ruled out, but I'm assuming he's going to play. So it's really just LeBron and AD for me, and that's it.
Yeah, so I'm too scared to get to Rui and too scared to get to Max Christie, given the changes to these rotations.
Hmm.
If they're playing 30 minutes, I like them today, given their ownership. But I have no confidence in what this rotation is going to look like right now. So you're really rolling the dice. They could lean on Shake Milton here. I mean, he is probably like he's definitely better than Gabe Vincent, I think. They don't
Oh,
really
for sure.
have many other guards at that point. Like Dalton Connect's sort of a one-trick pony for right now. So, I mean, we could end up getting a lot more of Shake Milton than you would ever expect to see. Jackson Hayes is back now. Is he in the rotation? I don't know. Do they want to just go small? This would be a team to do that against. You could really trot out whatever you want again. And I don't mean this negatively, but like you don't need Jackson Hayes to match up with Evan Mobley in the Evan Mobley at the 5 minutes. That can be any one of these other guys, whether that's Rui. If Rui can guard Jokic, and I use the term guard incredibly loosely here, but if he can be a matchup on Jokic in the playoffs, he's going to be okay on Evan Mobley in a regular season game. So maybe they don't bring Hayes back. No idea. It's a tricky spot today for the Lakers, but I feel pretty damn good about LeBron and AD if they're in.
Yeah, yeah, I think they're both pretty good spend ups. Again, we have a lot of value, so you have to spend up your salary. You have to use your salary somewhere, and I think both those guys are pretty good plays.
And I guess I have no issue whatsoever getting Austin Reeves. I don't think he looks like any sort of priority or anything, but I mean, he is playing a shit ton of minutes as well. 37 and a half over his last five, 36 over the last 10. He's just out there at this point. You would prefer to have him have an MPE just because he should, but even with this positionality, I'd be more than okay to get to him. If you guys want to roll the dice, I don't hate the idea of taking shots on Rui or Max Christie and GPPs, but you need to make sure that you get every single minute you're expecting because you're not going to get there with those guys if you don't.
Yeah, that's just like you laid it out perfectly. It's just like there's a lot more risk with those guys now with
Yeah.
Milton and Dorian Finney-Smith active. So
Now, if you're playing 150 in the large field contest for tonight, maybe that kind of risk is the risk that you want to try to take on. I wouldn't want to have a ton of those guys because you could see somebody get usurped in the lineup pretty quickly, and it's going to happen eventually. I don't expect this starting lineup for the Lakers to continue to look the way that it does. One more thing we have to talk about before we finish off this Memphis Phoenix game. You guys like promos, I assume. I got a really good one on the Odds Shopper side, but it only exists for today and tomorrow. So if you want to get Odds Shopper and the Portfolio EV tool, the absolute best sports betting and pick'em site tool that you can get, if you just want to make money, I think this is the best way for you to do it. You can get the Portfolio EV tool for $25 today or tomorrow using the promo code EV25. We wanted to give you a quick flash sale heading into the new year. This is 75% off. Normally $100. You get it for $25 for your first month. This is a great way to start off 2025. Hop in, come in, use the Portfolio EV tool to grind out a bankroll for the first 30 days. I expect you to do pretty well. Hell, I keep watching Greg and his bankroll challenge. He's up like $600 over the first 2 months of the NBA season. That could be you. Why not come in for 75% less than it would normally cost you to do so? So either click the link in chat, click the link in the description. Either way, come on in. $25, promo code EV25. Okay, what else do we got here? Game number 4, the final one. We'll probably have a couple things to talk about with regards to this game. So this is the injury report for the Memphis Grizzlies, which reads like Crime and Punishment. Santi Aldama is out. Brandon Clark is out. Zach Edey is out. Gigi Jackson is out. Jake LaRavia out. Ja Morant out. Marcus Smart out. Vince Williams out. Yuki Kawamura questionable. And it's questionable that I said that correctly. So, by all accounts, they have 10 guys with Kawamura, 9 without him. Are we on the same page there so far?
Yep.
Okay. So everybody's owned except for Cam Spencer, who's coming in at 2, and Colin Castleton, who's at 0. Maybe him and Kawamura get a little bit of love, but we don't know the status on Kawamura yet. Everybody else, on the other hand, call it 50 for Desmond Bane, 35 for Jalen Wells, 30 for Triple J, 65 for Scottie Pippen Jr., 55 for John Conchar, 30 for Luke Kennard, 15 for Jay Huff. Obviously, they all look great. There's a reason they're all getting this ownership. Everybody gets whatever shots they want. There's a billion minutes to go around. And they usually kind of put the brakes on their rotations to begin with. So it kind of makes you feel a little bit better about like the 5th, 6th, and 7th guys for the Grizzlies, maybe more than you would in these scenarios otherwise. I'm just going to throw it to you. Like, wherever you want to take it, because I don't know how to drive this ship. I mean, there's 280%. No, that's 2.8 guys per 8-man lineup.
Yeah. So obviously this is by far your best team to get to. The Yuki Kawamura news is pretty important though, because if he gets rolled out, you're just going to feel better about some of the value plays, like the minutes you're going to feel a little bit safer about. So definitely keep an eye on that. But I guess we'll start with Scottie Pippen. He's getting the most love, 65% ownership currently. I think he's your best play of the slate. With Ja Morant and Marcus Smart off the court this year, he's got a 34% assist percentage. Last game, so he only played 23 minutes. However, that game was just like a massive blowout. He only played like 6 minutes in the second half. So he only played like 17 first half minutes. I think in a competitive game, you should get over 30 minutes from Scottie Pippen. So I think he looks great. He also had 11 potential assists in that game. So yeah, I think Pippen looks like your best guy to get to. As far as the two spend-ups go, Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. Right now, you got Bane around 2x the ownership of Jaren Jackson Jr. I think both are really good plays, though. So with Ja Morant off the court and Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr. 1.4 fantasy point per minute player, Desmond Bane 1.19. You should get Jaren Jackson starting at the 5, which should raise his floor plus ceiling. The rebound numbers should increase for Jaren Jackson Jr., or they do when he plays the 5. I don't think you're going to get 20 rebounds again from John Conchar. It was 15, but still, like that was wild. They had 15 rebounds. Yeah. But yeah, I think those two spend ups look really good. Again, with Bane and with Jaren Jackson Jr. The other value plays. So you got Conchar, Wells, Kennard, kind of in that next tier. I think those guys are pretty similar plays. Kennard at 3.8K, I think is maybe going a little bit overlooked right now. Shooting guard, small forward eligibility. He'll do some ball handling too. Like last game, he had 7 potential assists in 27 minutes. So I think he's a pretty solid option. Obviously, no issue with Conchar or Wells. Their minutes are going to increase here too. The guys that are not getting much ownership, Jay Huff coming in around 15%. He's 3.8K. Listen, like if Jaren Jackson Jr. gets in foul trouble, like this team does not have another, like I don't think they're going to want to play Colin Castleton much. So I do think Jay Huff is reasonable, decent point per minute player, obviously with no Edey and with no Brandon Clark. This team's just shorthanded on big. So the minutes weren't amazing in the first half last game for Jay Huff, but I still think he's a totally reasonable option to get to there. And then honestly, I do have some interest in Cam Spencer. Would feel better about him if Kawamura does not play. 3.5K right now, getting no ownership. I think he's like a little bit interesting in large field tournaments. So far and away the best team to get to. I think you got to get some exposure. And yeah, keep an eye on the Kawamura news because it's pretty important.
Do you think there's a chance that they start Huff alongside of Triple J? And the reason I say this is because if they don't, then what we're really talking about then is basically a 9-man rotation because Colin Castleton never saw the floor last time out until the fourth quarter in the blowout. Same for Kawamura. Now they've lost Jake LaRavia in this scenario. I wonder if the team's balance is easier if you don't want to run everybody into the ground. Because if you're willing to start Triple J at center, that leads me to believe that Colin Castleton is not playing in any sort of real minutes unless something goes wrong. Whereas if you start Huff alongside of him, then you can sub Castleton in for Huff. Triple J can still play center minutes when it matters. It takes a bite out of the rotation because if it's Triple J at center and Huff is the backup, then I don't think Castleton should even get projected for minutes.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think if
I
they
don't think
start
they're changing the lineup, by the way, but if they do,
yeah. Yeah, I like that. Like if Jaren starts at the five, yeah, I'm pretty sure Castleton's going to be a DNP because I don't think they're going to want to play like Colin Castleton alongside Jay Huff. I just don't think that would work.
I don't think so. That would surprise me a little bit. And then, like Kawamura also didn't play until it was a problem. Now, to me, that's a little bit different than the multi-center look that we're gonna have here. Um, but like in the grand scheme of things, if Kawamura doesn't play, you could just be looking at an eight-man rotation for Memphis with Colin Castleton just sort of like lurking on the sidelines as something if something happens, which is going to make someone like Cam Spencer go underlooked.
Yep, agree. So, yeah, like he's currently getting no ownership. So, yeah, if he gets rolled out, if Kawamura gets rolled out, I do like Spencer a good amount. Maybe that ownership will increase, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to go up by too much.
Yeah. Like when it comes to Bane, Wells, Triple J, and Pippen to me, like just do whatever you want. Is like I don't have analysis for that. Like they all look really good. Triple J's expensive, but we see when Morant's not around, this is like a 30% usage guy. You have no idea what he's going to be able to hang on this Phoenix team. You're not going to meet a lot of resistance with Mason Plumlee manning the back line either. So, like, I just don't know how you dodge something like this. It's exciting. It's the 9 o'clock game. This would be really wild if it was a 7 o'clock start and you were just locking in all of your stuff. But you might have said this when you were talking about it, but I'm going to hit
Hmm.
you with the question anyway.
Okay.
If you're since there's 280% ownership coming into Memphis, let's say the expected lineup construction is three Grizzlies. Who would be your three priority Grizzlies?
That's a good question. I would say Scottie Pippen, Desmond Bane, and then probably one of the values of Conchar, Wells, Kennard. If I just had to pick three.
Yeah, I think I would go Pippen, assuming the starting lineup is the same. I would go Pippen. Conchar's just going to be easier to fit to me, and I just by a hair. Now, you know what? Pippen, Wells, I forgot that the gap in ownership there between Conchar and Wells is massive. Pippen, Wells, it's probably, and I would probably try to pay up to get a little bit lighter on Triple J here at 8,700. He's just a completely different guy when Morant is not around. He really explored the studio space last year and got those touches. And now, even with missing a lot of these guys, this Memphis team is a little bit better than what they were running out there for a good chunk of last year. So yeah, give me Triple J. I
Yeah.
like the
Yeah, I
spot
like I
for
like
him.
I like Triple J a lot too. Like I think, and also like against Mason Plumlee, I don't think you're gonna have to worry as much about foul concerns. Obviously, that's
Yeah.
always something you have to have in the back of your mind with Jaren. But yeah, like the ceiling just goes up when he plays the five, and he's going to be playing the five a lot in a matchup like this with the two bigs out.
It's just a wild, wild game, man. Like they're just missing so much.
This is like
So
Memphis of
much.
last year, man. I feel like this is like it was every slate where Memphis had like eight or nine guys.
Dude, Memphis has done this like four times in my entire career being here, and it's four distinctly different times that it happened. Like prior to when they got Ja, like they were next level atrocious.
Hmm.
I don't even remember half the dudes that were available on some of those teams. It was bad. Really, really bad. They tank in ways that like I can't even understand sometimes. They're that bad. Yeah, they went 22 and 60 in the 17-18 season. I mean, some of the dudes on this team. I don't know who Dusty Hannas is. I remember
I
him playing from
remember
time to
him.
time. No, Joakim Noah was on that team for a brief amount of time, which I don't totally remember. Yeah, Dusty Hannahs played 26 minutes that season. Marshawn Brooks, who was part of the accidental not Dylan Brooks trade at the time,
Oh, I think I do remember
one of
that
the big
too.
weird trade deadline things. Bruno Caboclo was on this team. I mean, there's a lot of the corpse of Chandler Parsons, a wild old Memphis team, man. And then we get to Phoenix. And this one's got some information waiting in the balance. We don't know the status officially yet of Devin Booker, still on the injury report as questionable. No Nurkic for his suspension. No Royce O'Neal with an ankle sprain. 30% ownership to Durant, 30 to Plumlee, 20 to Tyus Jones, 0 to anybody else. And I kind of get it. I mean, these guys should be able to look pretty good here against Memphis. Memphis's offense is going to struggle. I think the defense can still be okay. What do you prefer here? Is it paying up for Durant or is it hitting that mid range for Tyus and Mason Plumlee?
Yeah, I think I like the value or like the mid range a little bit better. Like obviously I'm not gonna say no to Kevin Durant, but at over 30% ownership, assuming Booker's in, I feel like that's a little bit high. Um Tyus Jones, 5.2K. It's a revenge game narrative for any of those that care about that. Again, that I don't factor that in whatsoever, but
Love it.
he'll probably play like around 30 minutes or so. So like he's totally fine play. Would look better if Booker gets ruled out. Plumlee, the other guy getting ownership, he played 26 minutes last game. You know, Mason Plumlee's a pretty good point per minute player. I don't know if those minutes are necessarily secure though. Like, they could always go to Oso. We've seen games where Mason has started and they've gone to Oso more off the bench. So you always do have to factor that in. And then no one else really getting any ownership. Like I think it's pretty hard to get to Beal, assuming Booker is in. If Booker gets ruled out, then like maybe you can start looking at some of these value plays for Phoenix. But assuming he's in, I think it's really hard to get to them. Like Okogie played 31 minutes last game. Like maybe he'd be consideration if Booker gets ruled out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I agree with the ownership. But like KD, Tyus, and Mason are your top options for Phoenix.
Yeah, that ownership certainly stands out. If Booker plays, do you have any interest at 9,200?
Um, so how long has he been out for? He's been out. It's been like 2 weeks. Do you think he's gonna be on a limit? Like they might ease him back in this game. That would be the concern for me.
Let's see. Wow. Has he really not missed any time before this start? He didn't have a single game off before that? That's wild.
Really? I thought like Booker was out earlier in the year.
So did I, unless this game log on RotoWire is incorrect. But I don't see a gap in it anywhere.
Hmm.
I would have remembered it differently, but
Right.
apparently not. Let's see. He missed 4 games last year in March, came right back and played 38. Uh, okay, so missed 3 games last year at the beginning of the season, came back, played 35, then missed 5 more, got 26 in that return, 32 the game after that, but they did beat the shit out of Minnesota in that game where he only played limited minutes. So that could have been a bit blowouty. I don't know. He probably plays like what, 32 to 34?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if he's just like full go, then like I think he's an interesting tournament play. Like I think I'd rather in tournaments play like a 1% Booker than like a 30% KD.
Yeah, I think there's more. Look, if you have a lineup that's like iffy, then you've got a swap that you can make and
Yep.
really make up some ground if something goes wrong. If you've already hit a couple of the good pieces, then make sure you maintain that higher owned Kevin Durant piece. This is a fun slate for like a generic 4 gamer. Like the games are good-ish. I mean, Memphis obviously notwithstanding, but like Clipper Spurs is an interesting game for where these teams are. Minnesota OKC is obviously good. Cleveland Lakers is cosmetically good. Yeah, Cleveland's awesome. And then, Memphis Phoenix could have been awesome if this broke the right way, but it turns out I wonder what the line would be if for all of the guys that are out for Memphis against this Phoenix team.
Like if they're all in, you mean?
No, no, no. Like, what if all the injured guys were playing against Phoenix instead of the active guys that are playing? Like they had
Oh,
Morant, Smart, Aldama, Brandon Clark, and somebody else starting. Vince Williams.
probably be pretty similar. Eh.
I should
I
run
think
this.
they're.
I should load that in here right now and find out if I project it out like Memphis versus Memphis, who
I
would look
think they would
better.
probably be slightly more under like. So what's the spread right now in this game? So
5.
it's yeah, okay. So I think Phoenix would probably be favored by like 6, maybe like another point or so.
Okay. I mean, so like let's just say starting lineup would be Ja, Aldama, Edie for sure.
Hmm.
And then you're probably getting
I think Marcus Smart probably starts,
Mark
right?
Marcus Smart, Vince Williams, probably, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Assuming we could include Vince Williams at that point. And then you're getting Laravia, Brandon Clark, Gigi Jackson off the bench. It's probably pretty close.
It's yeah, I mean it's a pretty similar. It's like yeah, 'cause some of these like guys like Vince Williams and like Gigi Jackson have not played like at all basically this
Right.
year, but they're solid rotation players. So
Yeah. That'd be a fun one, man.
uh,
Grizzlies injury report versus Grizzlies active report. Somebody sim that bad boy for us. I got nothing left here. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. DK, tell the people where to find you.
yeah, you guys can find me on Twitter, DK__DFS, or on YouTube, DK DFS. Hope you guys all have a good New Year's Eve.
Have a good New Year. Be safe, everybody. Hang out here. Hit that like button for Live Before Lock. I'll see you tomorrow in 2025. Stay right here.
No, it does not, but it's beautiful. It's everything I want it to be. Yeah. How about some hard cold facts? No.
What is happening, everybody? It is the final NBA, well, actually, the final show at all on the YouTube channel of 2024 because it is New Year's tonight. So if you guys are either going out later or if you haven't gone out quite yet and you're going to be hanging out, spending at least the last few hours, part of the end of your year with Eric and myself, we appreciate. Do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We got a little bit of a small slate here, 4 games, but we're not really lacking for value, Eric, because the Memphis Grizzlies have only a handful of guys active today. So kind of back to the Memphis Grizzlies situation at the end of last year, where if you remember, what do we go? Like a month and a half where the Grizzlies only ran an 8-man rotation. The difference is now they actually have some better players to make up that shortened rotation, but it's going to make for an interesting slate. It's going to give us some talking points. But more important than that, Eric, what plans do you have for today? And where are you? Because Jordan pointed out that you got a fax machine behind you, which is not your normal setup.
No, I'm in my dad's office here in Scottsdale, so we're hanging out, having a good time here on New Year's. I'm gonna grill some carne asada for the fam. We're gonna be, well, you have to zoom in on that. I can see it in the Zoom box, Jordan. Why?
Jordan really was enamored with the fax machine as we're.
It's a printer too. I mean, it's a combo. It's a combo. It's a 2-in-1. All you need, desk station. That is what it is. So. Anyway, Happy New Year to you as well. What plans do you have, and why is it maybe partaking in something that is gummy and falling asleep early?
No, I've got my brothers here, and we're just going to be hanging out. We're actually watching season 2 of Invincible right now. So watching season 2 of Invincible. If you guys haven't watched Invincible, it's on Amazon Prime, and it's awesome. So watching Invincible, we watched season 1 together, watching season 2 together now. And then we were going to order Chinese food for dinner. But just like how the Chinese food place that I like in town was closed for Christmas, turns out they're closed for New Year's Eve as well. So we're pivoting right now. We're trying to figure out what it is that we're going to get instead. It looks like we're going to be getting food from an Italian place nearby. But that is currently in the works as we speak, with my brother ordering the food, then going to pick it up. So we got a good deal going right here. I work, I'm earning the money. I gave him my credit card to go pick up the food with, but then he's doing the legwork. He's picking it up. And then by the time we're done with the show, he'll be out here ready for me. So it'll be good. Anything else that you got planned with the fam, or just hanging out?
No, just going to hang out, probably watch the football game. We were thinking about going to the football game, the Penn State, Boise State game. So that'll be going on half an hour after the show gets over. We'll put that on in the background, check in on that. But super excited for college football here over the next 2 days. Should be epic. But yeah, heading back early in the morning, Rose Bowl time.
And then as we start to talk about the NBA slate here, because we got that to cover as well, only 4 games. Any overarching general thoughts you have about the slate before we get into the nitty gritty here and start breaking down the players we like getting to and how we're going to be handling late swap?
Yeah, you said it a little bit in jest, but like all day I've been thinking about the days of yore where it was like, I think there was a phase of Golden State being 8 or 9 guys forever. And obviously more recently last year, Memphis just had a down year and they had 8 or 9 guys, it felt like routinely, and we constantly had to figure out exactly who and what and how. And I think the answer is just a lot of them. Like sometimes you overthink it and it's like, oh, who can I possibly get underweight to? Who can I possibly get away from? And the opportunity that exists with like a 4,200 Conchar, it's just too good to basically pass up at all. And people try to get really, really cute. Or I had somebody ask me, oh, should I just like stack up another game? Hope Memphis just completely fails. It's like, not really, because it's almost impossible. Like they would have to shoot 20% from the field, 30% from the field to basically run into a spot where they'd be so bad you wouldn't want them in lineups. There are times that I'll get away from like mega chalk situations shorthanded, but generally that's when you have very expensive salaries. Considering Desmond Bane at 7,500, and he's just so hard to get away from on this slate. Jaren Jackson Jr. is expensive, but the opportunity he has in a game that's like pushing 240, it's moving up there. It's just too much to ignore. So Memphis, they're number 2 in the West for a reason. They're really, really good. And even as shorthanded as they are, so many incredible options there from that game. So, I mean, we'll parse through that. I know that's important to a lot of people, but like basically playing like 2, 3 Grizzlies in every single lineup minimum, some of them 4 or 5 not really thinking too much about it and trying to fill in with some lower owned pieces.
Yeah, I've got my initial run of Sims done here, and my first run here. My 3 most rostered players, Memphis Grizzlies. 4 my 5 most rostered players, Memphis Grizzlies. I think there's also something to talk about in terms of the other side of the game. Are there going to be Phoenix players we want to be getting to? Because on one hand, if we're loading up on Memphis, it wouldn't make a lot of sense just logically to be off of the Phoenix side. But at the same time, too, you got Devin Booker potentially coming back. So that eliminates a lot of the points per dollar value that would be there. But here's overall the situation we have with injuries for today. LeBron is questionable. He's dealing with an illness. I tend to think he plays, Eric. It's always hard to know what to make of AD, LeBron being questionable. LeBron actually did sit last game, but I do think he's going to end up playing today. Devin Booker also questionable. He's missed the last few games with a groin injury for the Phoenix Suns. So I'm going to ask you, LeBron in or out, and then Devin Booker in or out. Starting with LeBron, which direction are you leaning there?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards it being in. I think it's his birthday, too. Not that matters. Happy birthday, LeBron. But I think we would have probably gotten word early on in the day if he wasn't going to be playing. Not just because it's his birthday, but like it's LeBron James. It's New Year's. It feels like a spot that if people are going to take out their plans earlier in the day and like, decide to go spend $500 to go sit in the pitch dark of crypto.com arena, they would probably want to get a heads up. It would be really brutal for the Lakers on on New Year's Eve to rule out LeBron like an hour before tip. I feel like if it were like questionable with this illness deal, like if it were questionable whatsoever, I think we would have gotten news way, way earlier today. So I've been on the lookout for it, obviously trying to react to some bets maybe if something were to break, but it hasn't yet. I doubt it will.
Yeah, and by the way, yesterday was LeBron's birthday. In the grand scheme of things, is it important? No, but for individual people in chat, they care a lot about birthdays, and it is
sure do.
It is an issue if you misreport what day somebody's birthday was. So yeah, yesterday was LeBron's birthday. He turned 40 years old. I do wonder this. This is like a very silly talking point, but it's only 4 games, so might as well bring it up.
Go ahead.
Do we have to be worried? LeBron just turned 40 years old. Could he be hungover for this game today?
I mean, he definitely could be, but I bet LeBron has, LeBron James is already just a freak of nature. Like, I bet he's played hungover in his career and he's been just fine, put up like 35. Like, I don't know what you're supposed to do thinking about it. Plus, we have so much Memphis value. Like, I really don't care. It's more of just a joke around point. But yeah, if you were to be hungover, shout out him. I think he only drinks red wine. I think that was something that I had seen.
Those are the worst hangovers.
Yeah, those are the worst hangovers. You get that sugary hangover, but at least it's all natural. So he can, I bet he can bounce back all right.
Did you see the clip of John Gruden talking about Sebastian Janikowski playing drunk? And do you know what I'm talking about or no?
No, but this sounds already like the most intriguing thing ever. I'm here for it.
So John Gruden, when he was coaching the Raiders, Sebastian Janikowski was the kicker. He sent Janikowski out there to kick like a 60-yard field goal because, at least in part, he thought he wasn't going to be able to make it. He thought it'd be some kind of lesson for him. And Janikowski drilled the field goal while he was drunk. So supposedly he stayed out past curfew and made it into like the night before the game, came back super late. And then John Gruden was super upset about it. And this was at least partially the way that he was trying to teach him a lesson. He just drilled the field goal. That's
fantastic. For those who don't know, Sebastian Janikowski, growing up, he was like an absolute kicking goat. I think, didn't the Raiders use like a first-round pick on him or like a early second-round pick on him?
I think it was a first-round pick. I have to go back and look. I think I remember being late first-round pick.
Yeah, he was a big, big lefty, but also he had a big, big ego, and he liked to party. He liked to party. It was incredible to watch back in the day. But Sebastian Janikowski, shout out to the real GOAT. Does not shock me. He seems like the guy who'd be really good at bar games or like, playing golf drunk. Like he definitely stands out as that kind of a dude. So shout out Sebastian Janikowski. He was a real one.
17th overall pick in the 2000 NFL draft.
So unreal.
That's so the last kicker picked in the first round, right?
Oh, for sure. There's been some guys. So the one that's the most recent was that Florida State kid who had broken all the kicking records, and he got cut after his first year. I believe it was with Tampa Bay. He was the Florida State kid that was unbelievable. I don't know why I know so much about kickers, but the last one that was like borderline first rounder, I think he was like early second round as well, was a Florida State kid who won all the awards, could make it from 60, and then he got the complete yips his rookie year and never kicked again.
Well, Sebastian Jankowski, he is correct. The last kicker drafted in the first round. So also, he is the highest drafted kicker, it looks like, ever,
Oh, for
according
sure.
to at least the AI, what it's telling me. Doesn't mean it's totally correct, no, but it's more accurate than me trying to figure it all out on my own on the fly here. It's kind of like a research assistant. But let's get more into this NBA slate, Eric. And I asked you on LeBron James. Now, Devin Booker, to me, a little bit more iffy, but I kind of do have a lean here. Devin Booker, I think he plays, but with a minutes restriction.
Yeah, I think Devin Booker plays too, which is freaky. Last night, I didn't think so. And then there was word that he was going to play. Then he went through shoot around, and I was like, oh, well, that sucks. But there's not a lot to really do about it other than it definitely devalues Kevin Durant. It devalues some of the usage that you'd be looking at, makes Bradley Beal basically unplayable here. He's been playing a lot more minutes of late here. He's a guy that I think was going to be an interesting tournament option if you got Devin Booker out, especially with as much interest as we have in the Memphis side. I'm kind of off of all three of those guys. It's basically going to be Mason Plumlee and a little bit of Tyus Jones in my life on the Phoenix side. I don't really like any of those three guys in Phoenix. Their expensive price tags just kind of have me completely off of it. And I don't understand 9,600 Kevin Durant pulling this kind of ownership other than you say, hey, it's the game environment. We have Memphis on the other side. And if everything stays intact, yeah, Kevin Durant's going to look good. But Devin Booker back is such a big deal that I'm shocked people want to just jam in 9,600 Kevin Durant, even on a 4-game slate.
I agree with you. Now, in turn, though, Eric, we're going to have to find somebody to pay up for because we've got, and it's the Memphis value, while they are good value options, we should add in. It's not like these guys are all the flat min, where we're trying to get to Scottie Pippen and he's priced in the mid range, trying to get to Desmond Bane and he's priced in like the upper end of the mid range. So while we do have a lot of value, it's not like we have infinity salary to pay up for, although a pretty good amount. I'll ask you this. If Kevin Durant isn't the guy you want to spend up for, who is it that is your priority to spend up on?
Yeah, it's LeBron James at 9,700. He's pulling 27% ownership, so it's not like he's completely unowned, and he has AD there on the other side. They're facing Cleveland, a much more difficult defensive matchup, but we're talking about $100 more to get to LeBron, and the number of things that he can do on a basketball floor that Kevin Durant, obviously the assist rate is going to take a big dock with Devin Booker in there. The rebound rate, much better on the LeBron James side of things. I mean, LeBron is just going to have a more well-rounded box score a majority of the time here, and if they're pulling even comparable ownership right now, I'm a little bit surprised to see Kevin Durant, the more popular one. Obviously, we have him like a 1 fantasy point difference here, but I've got LeBron projected a little bit better. I think he's kind of the guy that I probably end up clicking on the most when it's all said and done here. And it should be one of those things where I can look at the late swaps. I can look at what happens. And obviously, if LeBron ends up out, I think that's going to naturally funnel me to Kevin Durant, whether I want to or not. So there's at least a little bit of a safety cushion there, but he's got that Q tag. And we've seen this so many times in NBA DFS. It's much more difficult to project their ownership here. So while we haven't projected around 27% ownership, he's questionable. And the later on that he is questionable, it's going to pull down his ownership. So for me, I know that we have like really high upside options, but it's not like anything's 3K on the Memphis side. I think the only guy who's like 3K that I'm remotely thinking about is Cam Spencer. I don't know even if he's going to be somebody that I want to be playing at all when it's all said and done, but like everybody's 4,300 and above. I guess Luke Kennard is 3,800, but like Memphis, it's not like they're those 3K freebies thrown into your lineup. So I can't really get to the Wembys, to the SGAs. 80's interesting for sure, but right now it's LeBron for me.
Do you remember any of the idiots that we were playing for Memphis last year? I'm trying to recall some of the names.
Oh God.
None of these people exist anymore.
Yeah, well, they kind of do. I mean, oh man, now you're making me like rack my brain for it. I mean, Vince Williams Jr. was the GOAT, and he's been out like all season. That guy last year was just unchained. I think he's played like 2 games, 3 games this year. He's the first one that comes to mind. Gigi Jackson as well, who was destroying Summer League, but then got hurt. He had a foot issue at the beginning of the season, hasn't even played yet. Like those 2 specifically stand out, but they're still on the roster at least. I can't think of anybody that like, I know we had so many like shuffleboard guys who came in, had a cup of coffee and left immediately, but those 2 stick out the most.
Some other ones as well. Yeah, Gigi Jackson was another one. Jordan Goodwin. Remember Jordan
Yuta
Goodwin?
Watanabe as well.
Yeah, Jordan Goodwin had some big games.
Yep.
There was Lamar Stevens drew a couple of starts. There was also Zaire Williams, who's on the Nets now. The other one, too, there was the guy who you and I were convinced was a UFC fighter, Mauzinho Pereira. Remember that guy?
No, I do
remember
not.
him? Oh, my God. We joked about him for a while. There was another guy, too, with a really long name who was in our lineups a lot for a while.
2023-24 Grizzlies. I need to see the roster. I'm just pulling it up. Because I mean, obviously, we can go through the good times. We had like Wenyen Gabriel was on that team. What a time to be alive.
Gabriel being on
DeJoun Giroux. I remember clicking on him like 1 or 2 times. So I definitely shouldn't have.
This is the guy.
Harrison was on the team.
This is the guy that I was 2 of them in that people just threw into chat. Now we have Tosan
Evie Boonham, the Princeton kid,
and Trey Jemison, who's like a 4th stringer on the Pelicans or something. I don't even know if he's still on. At least at one point, I saw him make an appearance for the Pelicans. But yeah, we had Evie Boyman and we had Trey Jemison. 2 guys who in different slates were like 50+% owned.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yeah, you're going to hear me count. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33 players played for the Memphis Grizzlies at some point last year. That is unfreaking believable. 33 dudes saw the court for the Memphis Grizzlies.
And how many of them are? There was also the guy who was the shooter that shot like a catapult. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Was it Big Roddy Thotty?
He was a sniper in the G League.
Jack White?
No, that's a singer. No, the guy he had, I know how I could picture his shot and I know what he looked like. He looked like everybody from your hometown.
Matthew Hurt. That's who it was.
There we go.
Matthew Hurt.
Go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Dude, this is so fun. Just playing the hits. We're playing the hits. Well,
anyway, we've got another one of those kinds of slates tonight for the Memphis Grizzlies. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start to walk through some of the players that you and I are prioritizing the most from Memphis, but also your guys' questions in chat here. And Jeff saying Kenny Lofton. I don't remember Lofton being super relevant for DFS last year, though.
He wasn't.
I don't remember chalk Kenny Lofton slates.
Kenny Lofton.
Shout out to Abby Schreier. Abby came in 20th on FanDuel last night, 14,000 entries, and says, let's fucking go. Thanks, fellas. And by the way, anybody who wants to sign up for any of the packages that we have here at Stokastic, we do have our link join deal. Good way to close out the year. Sign up for a package, but get access to it for free. Any one of our affiliates that you sign up for, you see the list of them on screen right here. For each one of them you sign up for, 1 free month of core access to any sport of your choosing. We've also got a great portfolio EV sale going on right now in honor of Tosan EV Boyman from before. If you guys sign up, and this deal is only going to be going on until tomorrow night. So if you guys want to sign up for our portfolio EV tools, it's the same tools that I use for my bankroll thread on Twitter. I also play the majority of my own personal bets using the portfolio EV tools. Just $25. So 75% off when you sign up with the promo code EV25. This is a New Year's deal. So it's available today, it's available tomorrow, and then it's going away. So if you guys are interested, get in on that now. Pierre, I'm happy you asked this, Pierre, because this is the direction I wanted to go next. He wants to know FanDuel Memphis players in order of importance. So let's start by looking at FanDuel, Eric, and then we'll look at DraftKings after that. And all right, first, let's read off the ownership for these guys because the 5 most popular players on FanDuel are all from the Grizzlies. We got Scottie Pippen, 72% owned. We got Jalen Wells, 57% owned. John Conchar is 56% owned. Desmond Bane is 54% owned. Jaren Jackson Jr. is also 54% owned. Now, we can only play 4 players from a single team on FanDuel. If the 5 most popular players are from the Memphis Grizzlies, this means, Eric, that if you're building a cash game lineup, you are going to have to leave one of these guys out of it. So I want to ask you this first, and then we'll talk about GPPs as well. You pretty clearly want 4 Memphis Grizzlies in a FanDuel cash lineup.
Yes.
Which one are you excluding of the 5 super popular players?
All right. So I'll say who I'm playing, so then everybody else will be excluded. I'm definitely playing Scottie Pippen Jr.
Agreed.
I'm definitely playing Jalen Wells.
Okay.
I'm definitely playing John Conchar. And I'm definitely playing Desmond Bane. No, I'm not. I'm definitely playing Jaren Jackson Jr. 8,300 Jaren Jackson Jr. on FanDuel. What are we actually doing here? He's definitely in that lineup. So here's probably what I've been doing. I'm probably playing a point guard, a shooting guard, a small forward, and a power forward. And then I'm rotating around some other pieces accordingly. So I think the one who ends up getting excluded. Shit, I lied. Jalen Wells is getting the boot. I'm looking through my optimal. Jalen Wells is getting the boot.
As well for cash. Now, with that said, this is very tricky. All 5 of these guys are very, very cash viable on FanDuel. We can only pick 4 of them. As long as you got 4 out of these 5 players in your lineup, you're on the right path. I'm going to say exclude Jalen Wells. I don't feel great about it, but I don't feel great about excluding any of these other guys either. To me, like Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., there's so much usage available to those guys. I want them in a cash game. And then Scottie Pippen, he's just clearly the best value. So I've got those 3 guys. Then it's Jalen Wells versus John Conchar. Between the 2 of them, I'm going to lean towards John Conchar. We've got projected for 3 more fantasy points. So Jalen Wells, odd man out if I'm only picking 4 to be playing for FanDuel. But I also think that there's clear tiers to these guys. And the question that we got here from Pierre is players' projected order of importance. Number 1 is very clearly Scottie Pippen. Fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. So Scottie Pippen, number 1, and we'll do this exercise for DraftKings also afterwards. DraftKings scenario, a little bit different because we could play way more than 4 of these guys in a cash game lineup. And we'll talk about how many we'd be willing to play in a DraftKings GPP lineup as well. So for me, it's Scottie Pippen, number 1. And then tier 2, I'm going to go Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. Then tier 3, it's Jalen Wells and John Conchar. I actually do get more exposure to Jalen Wells ever so slightly, but it's more because he has multi-position eligibility, shooting guard and small forward, whereas Conchar's only small forward. So if I'm just picking 1 to play and it's 1v1 question, the answer is Conchar, but Wells lands in a little bit more lineups just because he's the MPE. But either way, I'm going to group the 2 of them together in tier 3 for Memphis. Do you have any disagreements with that?
Nope. I'm 100% on board. I had to actually go through and build it out because I was like, yeah, I don't want to just say something that I don't actually believe there. But Jalen Wells pulling more ownership in tournaments, totally understood. But as you brought up before, projected for nearly 3 fantasy points more. John Conchar, as he started last game, we expect that he would be starting here in this spot. If he doesn't, you're going to have to swap off of it, or you can get to Jalen Wells. You should have a couple of other late pieces that aren't Memphis, whether that's from the Cleveland LA game or whether that's Phoenix on the other side of this one. It is pretty clear cut. You're playing 4 Memphis Grizzlies in cash over there. I think DK, I guess this is where it gets interesting. My optimal in DK.
Wait.
Okay.
I want to wrap up FanDuel and then we'll get to draft.
Cool.
Just for like organizational purposes. So
I like that.
Doesn't go too off the rails. So we're on the same page with just the super high order of importance players. For FanDuel, if you're picking one of these guys from Memphis to play as more contrarian Grizzly, so it's not Bane, Triple J, Conchar, Wells, Pippen, any of the other guys much lower owned on FanDuel. Outside of that group, do you have a preference for somebody to roster? I have one guy that stands out to me. Yep. I think he might be your guy as well, because I know he's somebody you've talked about liking in the past.
He's the nuke in the night. So let's hit the graphic. Hit the graphic for organizational purposes. Let's get it out of the way. Hit the damn thing. Why is the fax the God? Jordan Klein. New year, it's not going to be a new me. I'm just going to be angry.
It was funny last night. So obviously, you know that Emac was doing live before lock, filling in for you or hanging out with the family. Emac had no clue how the animations or graphics worked because, why would he? He's a gazillion years old. And so the first one that played, he talked over the entire thing, and it was so funny. It was so funny.
So it came back on, and he was like midway thing. And then his 27 fantasy points on the 14th against the Charlotte Hornets was very, very important.
Pretty much. It was also Jordan. I think it was Jordan had left us a super chat, had asked Jordan Klein, the producer, and asked us who our exotic play of the night was. So it was like Tyler Hero. It was highlights of white guys with EMAC talking over them. It was pretty fantastic.
All right. Well, I missed those producing days when you would actually do good stuff. I saw that too, by the way. Don't think you got away with anything. Your nuke of the night tonight. He's also your exotic of the night if you really want to go that direction. I think Jay Huff is the best tournament option on both sites right now. He's sub 4K on FanDuel. And I understand that that kind of puts you into an interesting lineup construction where you pretty much have to be playing Anthony Davis SGA. You can't play Victor Wembanyama there. He's center only, which is a little bit annoying there. But even still, Jay Huff is a sniper. This guy has been awesome every single time that I've rostered him, which is not very often if we're being honest, but every time I watch the games too, I'm impressed by him. And I know he's going to be coming off the bench. There's going to be certain constructions where he'll be at the 5, but he gets stuff done on the floor too. I think he's just one of the more impressive, quiet guys out there. And he's a 1.14 DraftKings points per minute producer on the season. He should be locked into more usage. He should be locked into more opportunity without John Morant. So, I mean, a 21% usage rate under all circumstances this season in a high-paced game here with Mason Plumlee on the other side, who is not known as an offensive centerpiece. I think there's a world where Jay Huff walks into more minutes. I think it's sub 4K over on DK, and I look at 3,900 over on FanDuel. I love it. Why are you still zoomed in on the facts machine?
He is. By the way, Jordan has you set up like this is an episode of The Office. With the framing of the camera and everything, it's like they're going in and they're getting your take on what's happening in the office right now, especially with that fax machine over your shoulder.
I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah. That was the only thing I could think we were looking at. Is like this looks exactly like he's in the back office and they're interviewing him for an office episode.
It's so funny.
Yeah, so
Anyway.
I agree with you. I think Jay Huff, especially for FanDuel, if I'm going off the board with a lesser owned Memphis guy, that's going to be the guy for me. I like getting to Jay Huff. Good fantasy producer. Also, if you look at Memphis's lineup today, they are just so severely lacking in big men to the point where John Contra, I don't know what his rebound prop is now, but earlier today, Eric, I'll actually pull it up right now.
John was at 7.5 or
rebound
8.5.
prop,
Yeah.
It was
8.5, I think
it was 8.5 juice towards the over.
Yep.
And what is it still what it is now?
I'll pull it up. I had gone through it. I went through all the Memphis props, trying to figure out if there's anything there at the starting lineup. I can't find anything. Portfolio EV does a better job than I'm going to do with it, so I'm probably just going to play whatever it is that pops up on there. 7.5, but it's heavily juiced, minus 135. 8.5 is plus 116 over on FanDuel now. That's come down as the days progressed, which I find to be pretty fascinating. There's a little bit of value we've got in Portfolio EV on the under of 8.5 at the moment, depending on where you're playing it. But yeah, I mean, that's still a gigantic number for a guy named John Conchar.
Yeah, that was one that I bet, and it was in my thread this morning as well. It was under 8.5. I think at minus 105. So good closing line value.
Great,
minus
great
146 now. But either way, it's a massive line for somebody like John Conchar. The relevance to you bringing up Jay Huff here is you do look at the Memphis lineup, and Jay Huff, far from a prolific rebounder, especially for a big man. But you just look through this lineup. It's like, who's going to grab rebounds? Because Triple J isn't really the best rebounding big man. Then you've also got Jay Huff potentially soaking up center minutes, and he's also somebody who has been pulling down a lot of rebounds, but maybe he does get more of those opportunities today, and maybe they are just really going to be hurting for size, considering who's available for this team. Like, does Colin Castleton have to play a handful of minutes? Potentially, but I like the upside of Jay Huff, so I'm on the same page as you, Eric. But at the same time, too, this is going to lead me into my guy that I want to go with for Nuke of the night, who I'm also overweight to the field to. If the Memphis Grizzlies are going to run out some smaller lineups here, is there an opportunity for Mason Plumlee to just pull down a billion rebounds? I think he could have just a dominating game on the boards if he gets the minutes. He's pulling some ownership. It's only a 4-game slate, so it's hard to find guys who are crazy contrarian. But Jay Huff and Mason Plumlee, they're not that differently priced here. And I think there's an opportunity for Mason Plumlee to really put up some numbers on the board, maybe even some easy baskets underneath, because I don't know that there's anybody to match up with the size of him.
There's not, but I do have concern about how they want to go about, like, against Triple J at the 5 or Jay Huff at the 5. They could have Kevin Durant out there play the 5, and that's kind of something that they've done. I mean, do you know the most minutes Mason Plumlee's played here in the absence of Yusuf Nurkic?
Let's see. The most minutes that Mason Plumlee has played. I don't know it off the top of my head.
26. He has not exceeded 26 minutes in a game all season long. And think about how many times Yusuf Nurkic was out or he punched a guy. He played 29 minutes the second game of the season. I lied, but 26 is the most he's played in a game that was absence of Yusuf Nurkic. He actually played over Nurkic in that game. So I'm looking through some of the box scores here. There's just not a crazy amount of minutes upside unless, again, he is just absolutely smashing souls. Like, he could get a lot done in a quick amount of time, but I do think Mason Plumlee's probably the piece of chalk as I go through my lineups right now. I'm trying to get away from, like I said, I'm definitely going to have him. I'm playing a number of lineups and I'll still have him mixed in. He's optimal around a quarter of the time, but 4,500, like there's a world where I think getting to Jay Huff where he's like 10% less owned, 3,800, and they're going to play comparable. Like there's a world where, they're about 3-4 minutes away from each other. And with that kind of disparity in the ownership and a $700 price difference, I do think I'm going to end up with more Jay Huff than I am Mason Plumlee on this slate. But I do agree with you. The rebounding upside, if he plays 26, 28 minutes in this spot, is ginormous.
Yeah. Let me look at the last, because the ownership I was looking at, the ownership was pretty similar. Let's see. Is that not the case anymore? That's not that far different. 24% for Plumlee, 17% for Jay Huff. I like both. I'm going to be overweight to both of them.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to have right around 15% Mason Plumlee, 20%. I'm not going to fade him, but I did not anticipate being overweight to him with my interest in Jay Huff, who was in 38% of my lineups last run. And then I'll rerun some more here because, I try to make some adjustments as we're talking through things on the Memphis side. I'm only playing DraftKings, not playing FanDuel today. So it should make it a little bit easier for me, but I'm looking through my lineups here. Yeah, Mason Plumlee, just not somebody that I'm going to project for more than 25 minutes in most scenarios. So, I mean, what do we have him projected for from a minutes perspective right now?
25, and in 25 minutes, he projects pretty well. We've got Plumlee for 24 and a half minutes and 25 fantasy points, but keep in mind too, he's very cheap.
Yeah, I know. And that's the main thing. I mean, if he wasn't cheap, even in the absence of Nurkic, I still feel uncomfortable because there's just so many times that he'll end up playing like 18 minutes just because they like the small ball configuration. They'll play Durant at the 5. And you could especially do it against Memphis with this team without Zach Edey out there, without Brandon Clark out there. Like there's a world where they just go to Durant at the 5 to close things out. And I think it definitely caps how much Mason Plumlee I think working through it this morning, I would have been a little bit more interested. But as soon as like Brandon Clark got ruled out, everything else on the Memphis side there, I'm like, man, this just sets up for small ball on the other side. Mason Plumlee, it just kind of makes sense for me to be at or below the field, knowing how much I like Huff and potentially what that upside could be. And then the center position, we didn't talk about any of the upside options. You have Anthony Davis, you have Victor Wembanyama, and then you've got Zubats, who I love all the time. He's a little bit overowned, but I'm still going to be, more inclined to play him where I think those minutes are so solid, even on a back-to-back. And it feels as though the field is just really clicking on Mason Plumlee and they're looking for stuff to play on the Memphis side. If he got steamed to like 30%, I wouldn't be completely shocked. And obviously that's a little bit of a different conversation then. But yeah, Mason Plumlee, he's fine. I just don't love him today.
Yeah, he's the player who, let's see, am I the most? Yeah, my last run of Sims, I was most overweight to. Actually, Wemby 1 and Plumlee 2 were the two players I came in most overweight to. Plumlee was a little bit lower owned on the last run, so maybe that'll come down a little bit for me, but I would be remiss if I did not point out somebody who the Sims were getting me to 40% of at the 20. It was then around 20% ownership. So rerun it. Maybe it'll come down to like 30% of Plumlee from it. I'm very confident based on my initial run that I'm going to be overweight to him. We've got some more questions that are coming to us, both from Discord as well as super chats. We've got BX44. No message here. Let's see if there was something in the chat. I don't see anything in chat, just the super chat. So BX44, you don't have to leave us another super chat, but if you wanted to ask us a question, just throw it into the YouTube chat so I could be looking out for it. If you just wanted to leave us a super chat to be a nice guy and to say Happy New Year, cool. Thank you. We appreciate the support. And Chris Williams also gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. So Chris, thank you very much. And also we got a super chat from Choke Hold'em who just says, thanks guys. So yeah, thank you very much as well. Some of the regulars in here, BX44, Chris Williams, Choke Hold'em, appreciate all you guys. And then Chris Williams also, follow-up super chat. Just want to say Happy New Year. Thanks for all you guys do, and a Happy New Year to all the great chat members as well. Only the great ones, not the bad ones. Keep that in mind. Who are the good ones? Who are the bad ones? Chris knows. Says, let's crush the leaderboards in 2025. Yes, thank you very much, Chris. And 99.9% of you guys are awesome. The ones who aren't are not even in chat anymore because they're bots or they're just Brandon cats.
Ooh.
All right, Jordan. I don't know if people were able to hear Jordan. He just whispered to Eric and I what the super chat was from BX44.
Oh, yeah.
BX44 wanted to know who are the must plays on FanDuel. All right, so going back to the FanDuel lineups I've built out here, I don't think we have to relitigate the Memphis scenario. I think people at this point know the Memphis guys, very strong must-play sort of players. Anybody outside of Memphis players that you're considering a must-play on FanDuel?
On FanDuel? Mm-hmm. No, there's not. I mean, I would like to play the same guys that I kind of was talking about to some extent. LeBron James, I think James Harden sub 9K. It's a back-to-back, but like I think it should be fine. Jalen Williams looks awesome. He's probably the guy who stands out the most in our tools, but I wouldn't call anybody a must-have that isn't a Memphis guy on FanDuel.
Yeah, so once again, not going to call these guys must-plays, but I don't want to give them nothing. So I'll just tell you some of the other guys who showed up pretty frequently in my FanDuel lineups. Jalen Williams, positionality, small forward, power forward, $8,500. He showed up in more than half my lineups. And then also Wemby showed up in about half my lineups. So there's power forward and center eligibility. Pretty easy to get up to him on FanDuel. So those are the two non-Memphis players that landed in my lineups most frequently for FanDuel purposes. And let's get back to some of your other questions. I saw the ones we had in Discord. And once again, if you guys haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We have here Larson 407. Any love for SGA as a pay up considering his ownership on FanDuel is low? Yes, SGA not massively popular today, and yeah, feel no surprise, more gravitating towards the Memphis guards. Eric, are you finding yourself getting to SGA much tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I think if he's going to be sub 10%, he's kind of one of these guys. I was on a show with Bellman the other day where it was just so weird, where you get like a 1-2% SGA. I'm just like, you take that every time because 35-40 in the realm. He's starting to do that more and more routinely. He's so efficient. He gets to the line a lot. He gets so much done on the floor. And it's funny because it's not even from three. We're having all these NBA conversations about what's happening with the game and the popularity. He only shoots like 34%. He actually shoots worse than 34% from three on the season. He gets so much done in the mid-range, so much done getting to the line. He's so shifty, so efficient. And then the assist rate has been looking better and better. It's a Minnesota team on the other side, so I think that keeps you a little bit more in check in terms of the blowout that we've become accustomed to here with OKC. And I think SGA at 11K, he just never ends up getting 10, 15% ownership. It's so unlikely he gets steamed up. And so, yeah, I basically de facto had him in for like 15% ownership no matter what.
Yeah, so that's actually where I'm at on SGA is 15%. Yep. So I'm overweight to the field on him, but my favorite pay-up option who's not pulling a ton of ownership, I prefer Wemby. Wemby's 14% owned over on DraftKings. And then let me refresh ownership just to make sure I'm looking at the most recent numbers. And here we go. All right. Yeah, no changes since the last time I looked at it. But anyway, Wemby is 13% owned now on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, he's 23.5% owned. So a little bit more popular on FanDuel with the power forward and center eligibility. But for me, I do prefer Wemby if I'm going to somebody who's a little bit lesser owned as a pay up option to SGA. And yeah, SGA only 10% over on FanDuel, but he also only has the point guard eligibility. So I prefer Wemby to SGA, but I'm still overweight to SGA there.
Totally understandable.
Rabashua says a lot of time is always spent on the most obvious thing. We know that we should play Memphis. How do we win this slate? All right. There's a lot of ways we could go here, Eric, but what's the key, do you think, to winning tonight's slate? Is it just playing more of the chalk? Is it differentiating somewhere else? Very open-ended question, but per Rabashua's question, how do we win tonight?
I mean, there's a number of ways, but one that I'm really, really identifying is Dante DiVincenzo. The Sims like him. I like him a lot. He's somebody that I think is just walking into a different role on this Minnesota team as his shooting has improved. He's 4,600 going up against an Oklahoma City team that, well, they're really, really good on the other side, but we've seen 37, 34 minutes here from a struggling Minnesota team the last two games for DiVincenzo, and he's won them those games flat out, almost. I don't want to say by himself because obviously he's coming off the bench. He's, still struggling on the entire sum of the season, but he's starting to knock down shots, starting to have that swagger again. And he is sub 5K. Now, you still have Mike Conley in, so it's not like we're getting some massive, massive minutes upside, but at least that's on the table here in this spot. And if he's going to be a lot lower owned than some poor fantasy producers on the Memphis side, I want to throw it out there again. I'm not going to fade Wells and Conchar, but I think mixing in more DiVincenzo into lineups and removing one of them from your lineups and getting to a little bit more of him, that definitely makes sense. I also think that for me, Mason Plumlee being underweight to him, I think I'm just on the opposite side of you. I think that that's a center play that I just don't really want to get to when I like Jay Huff a lot more for tournaments. I think there's a chance he ends up lower owned by a pretty drastic margin. We have an 8% gap between the two of them in our last ownership run, and I think that's understandable, but I will be a little bit underweight here. It looks like to Jaren Jackson Jr. I'll be around the field on Desmond Bane. He's extremely popular here, but I think some of those ancillary pieces there on the Memphis side, and then Mason Plumlee there at 4,500 when we have Wemby, AD, Zubats, so many other interesting center plays. I think we can just get away from it a little bit easier on this slate. I think that's going to be my main path of deviation from the field.
Yeah, so I'm not willing to get away from the Memphis guys. Just going to be playing that chalk there. And, guys like John Conchar, Scottie Pippen Jr., these are guys, Luke Kennard as well. Like, there are going to be cheaper guys. The field is getting to that I am as well. But where I'm going to want to be differentiating my lineups, and these are guys we've already talked about, I think the most reasonable way to differentiate lineups is with the lower owned pay-up options. Instead of playing Kevin Durant, play Wemby, play SGA. I think that this is a way that you could really reasonably differentiate a lineup. And obviously, we all know there's upside in guys like Wemby and SGA. So that, to me, is how my lineups are most differentiated, is by paying up for some of those guys.
Love.
Next question here. It is from Cream. Wants to know, on DK, would we prefer to play AD or Wemby? If we knew LeBron was out, the answer would be AD, but I have more of Wemby.
I have... How much Wemby did I end up with? I have to finish this one more time. So when it's all said and done, I'll give you a more accurate depiction. He's gone wildly all over the place for me here. So I can't. I think he was like 30%, then he was 10%. I want to figure something out here before I say anything.
Wemby for me. Wemby for me.
Yeah, it's going to be Wemby for me as well, by the way. Okay. There you go.
There we go. We're in alignment on that one. JW, favorite DK single entry plays. All right, so now we're talking DraftKings specific. I'm going to go with Wemby as a pay-up option to differentiate a little bit. The other guys, too, though, that, once again, I think you should be playing in single entry, the Memphis guys, Scottie Pippen Jr., John Conchar. I also like Desmond Bane. I like Jaren Jackson Jr. I prefer Bane to Triple J. What's the most amount of Memphis players you'd be willing to get to in one lineup, though, Eric?
I guess I can go lineup filter, and then let's see.
It's going to be a little hard to...
I know it's harder in NBA than NFL. It's super easy to do, but I've got a way that I kind of do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 in this lineup. I have 1, 2, 3. I have a couple with 5. So for what it's worth, playing 150, and yeah, I've got a couple with 5.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go to... It's only a 4-game slate. That's going to make a difference in this. There's also so many cheap Memphis guys. It depends which ones you're playing. Yep. Right, it's a little, if you're going like Scottie Pippen Jr., Desmond Bane, Jaren Jack, if you're only playing the highest priced guys, then I think it's a little bit trickier of a scenario. But let's say you're not playing Triple J, but instead you're going Pippen, Bane, Conchar, like Jalen Wells and Jay Huff or something like that. A lot of those guys are cheap enough to where it's reasonable that a bunch of those guys could have good games relative to their salary. So I'll agree with you. In general, 4, but I think there are certain circumstances where 5 Memphis players would be reasonable as well. As far as other favorite single entry plays, anybody else you would add to the mix, Eric? This is DraftKings, by the way.
Yeah. We talked Jay Huff ad nauseum. He's my second highest owned player now, which is disturbing. That needs to change. I made a mistake. I was gonna say there's no way that's gonna be the case. Um, Other favorite single entry play. Is there anybody else that you would be playing sub 5K? Like, is there somebody sub 5K? I brought up DiVincenzo. I guess there's one other one that I'm kind of curious what you think about in Chris Dunn on this slate, where he's 4,200. We haven't seen a crazy upside, but he's played like 34, 32 minutes the last two. Kevin Porter Jr. is back in our lives here. He ended up playing yesterday, only 16 minutes though. They've really been heavier on the Kevin or on the Chris Dunn side of things here of late. San Antonio, decent total. I don't know. There's some Chris Dunn interest I would have where it's like, all right, if you get a poor performance out of him, and maybe if you play Wemby in that lineup as well, you can do some interesting things in the late night hammer. But if they go off, you can't back end your line or like change your lineup after the fact and get to them. And you're going to be holding hands with a lot of chalk in terms of value. So I like the idea of DiVincenzo, and I like the idea of like a Chris Dunn as well for single entry.
Overweights the field on Chris Dunn. Another cheap one for me, given the price points that you gave out. Keldon Johnson is all the way down to $3,500. And I know that he's fallen out of favor in San Antonio, and he's a much better fantasy player than he is real life player. But he's a capable enough scorer that if somebody gets into foul trouble or he's just making his shots and plays extended minutes, there's a very clear upside for Keldon Johnson at $3,500. So that's going to be a guy for me at a very cheap price point.
Yeah, the problem he has is that Stephon Castle is like good at basketball. Like there's now a guy who's coming off the bench who's better than him at real life basketball.
Well,
and Olympic gold medalist Keldon Johnson is not going to like it very much.
Yeah, Keldon Johnson. It is crazy. He was on the Olympic team at one point. It's kind of interesting, right? Because these guys are a good fantasy producer, but not a good real life player. So he struggles to get the minutes regularly. But when he does, he's going to score points. And at $3,500 and around 20% ownership, he's somebody I want to be overweight too.
Yep.
Alucard, we answered this. He wanted to know how many Grizzlies is too many for smaller field single entry. In general, 4 is probably where you want to be unless you're playing a bunch of the cheap guys. Then Gator Nation wants to know, who is our favorite fade of the day with high ownership? So we'll say
Kevin
anybody 30+% owned. Anybody 30+% owned that you are looking to be underweight to the field to, Eric?
Kevin Durant.
Same for me. KD is...
I have 5% Kevin Durant right now.
Yeah, we've got 32% ownership to Kevin Durant. We've got 31% ownership to LeBron right now. And I mean, you got KD with Devin Booker back. It certainly changes the equation if Devin Booker ends up getting ruled out. But this is one of the reasons also that I find it really reasonable to get to SGA or get to Wemby. Kevin Durant is 3 times the ownership of SGA. He's double the ownership of Wemby. I just don't think Kevin Durant, especially on a slate that has enough value to where we could pay up for studs, I just don't think that Durant is outscoring these guys like at a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 clip when factoring in the price point as well. So this is, to me, the easiest way to differentiate some of our lineups, get away from Kevin Durant, and then pay up for somebody else instead.
Yeah, it makes way too much sense. And here's the thing. If Devin Booker ends up out, I'm well overweight to LeBron James right now. I will just make that 1-for-1 swap and figure it out from there. But yeah, that's kind of all there is to it. Kevin Durant with Devin Booker back in is not the same fantasy producer. Is there still an upside? Sure. But like, you know, Josh always talks about his target scores. And that's something that I've been thinking about more and more lately is like, all right, you get 50 out of Kevin Durant. Would you want him or wouldn't you want him? Like I've been thinking about that a lot in NFL with like Saquon Barkley and the expensive pay-ups there. I think in the NBA, like the equation changes a little bit because sometimes you'll get, you know, really chalky lineups that end up at the top because, you know, the chalk is generally better in a sport like NBA where we can project it far, far greater. But when you run into these spots where it's like a 2-3 fantasy point difference and you can see an expressed downside for a popular player, you just have to pull the trigger on that, I think, every single time because 50 would not be enough on this slate, I believe, to want to roster Kevin Durant at all. So like he doesn't hit that number very often when you have Devin Booker alongside of him here. Yes, Devin Booker will be limited. There's still going to be an upside against Memphis and with the total that we have before us, but I'm far more inclined to just go way, way underneath to those guys.
Next question here. It is from, we are caught up in Discord, but I did see there was a couple of super chats here. One of them is from Keith Wilson. He wants us to talk about the new Lakers players on FanDuel. Pretty easy. I don't have interest in the Lakers guys, this being Shake Milton and Dorian Finney-Smith on FanDuel or DraftKings. I don't know that Shake Milton's going to be in the rotation long term. I really like the DFS pickup for the Lakers.
Yep.
The problem is I really like it for real life purposes, not as much for DFS purposes. So you got a couple of things going on here. First off, Dorian Finney-Smith, $4,400 on both FanDuel and DraftKings. He's going to be coming off the bench. He is going to be a key pivotal piece for the Lakers if they're going to make a playoff push. But it's going to be primarily with his defense and then also his ability to knock down corner threes. Like, you're not going to be getting a ton of assists or rebounds or anything out of him. And then also this being his first game with the Lakers, I think he's probably going to be playing somewhat limited minutes. So I think Lakers fans should be excited that they added a good role player to the team and that they have gotten D'Angelo Russell and the black hole that he's been off the team. They're also getting a better shooter because DFS, if I'm not mistaken, he's shooting something like 42% from three this year, whereas D'Lo is shooting 33%. So good real life trade, Keith, if you're a Lakers fan, but I don't want to play him in DFS today.
So, I mean, I haven't even seen a book drop a line on Shake Milton. I talked about him ad nauseum though yesterday. I think he's going to play a lot more than we have projected and that you're kind of bringing up here now. I don't see how he doesn't. And I know Cam Reddish has been there for a while, I suppose now, and Dalton Connect can be a shooter off the bench, but they don't really have a creator off the bench. And if you stagger with AD where you just kind of dump it to him in the high post, or you go, LeBron James, where he obviously can be your point guard in these constructional lineups, as opposed to just an Austin Reeves. If you stagger Austin Reeves off of some of the LeBron minutes, yeah, maybe there isn't a crazy need for him, but I think Shake Milton's a little bit better than people think. Like, I don't think he's that bad. I don't think he was very long to be there on that Brooklyn Nets team. I mean, Brooklyn is going to look completely different come season end. Like, I'd be shocked if we saw Ben Simmons there, Cameron Johnson there. I mean, they're just going to hit the complete reset button and tank like there's no tanking left in life. And I think Shake Milton's a little bit more capable of a scorer off the bench. I think on the season, he's shooting like nearly 40% from three. I mean, 39% from three on this season, Shake Milton. So that's only 72 attempts. It's a pretty small sample size relative to what you'll see for bench players off in the NBA, but I could see him playing 20 plus minutes, but I still don't have interest at that tag. 4,500, just way too much. And DFS, it goes without saying. I mean, 3&D, a great pickup if they're going to go just really, really heavy and lean into the Max Christie in the starting lineup. They've been #1 in defensive rating over the course of the last 2 weeks since they put him in the starting lineup. Allowed for them to pull the trigger pretty happily on the D'Lo stuff. JJ Redick knew he wasn't long for that team.
Avi Schreier asks us now for FanDuel. We answered this for DraftKings before, but Davis or Wemby. Same for me. It's even on FanDuel. It's Wemby over AD. If LeBron does happen to get ruled out, then I prefer AD to Wemby, but I think LeBron's going to play.
LeBron, I think, is going to play too. And if he doesn't, then I want to get to like all the Lakers, and you should have Memphis pieces to get to them, so it shouldn't be too hard.
Phil Senzig, Beal on FanDuel. He wants to know, is that Jergens or bust? So Phil Senzig, who is now, it's now a branded lotion play of the night, Eric, is now the Jergens lotion play of the night, which EMAC was also very funny about last night. But he wants to know, is Beal going to be lotion or is he going to be bust for tonight? If Devin Booker's back, it's really hard for me to justify playing Bradley Beal as a tertiary option at a ceiling price.
Lord have mercy. How about the bust? That guy Rip sadly has left this life. But yeah, I'm with you. That sounds good.
$7,800 for Bradley Beal over on DraftKings. He is $7,200 on FanDuel. Which, sure, if Booker sits, then Beal comes into play on FanDuel, not on DraftKings for me. But I tend to think Booker's going to end up playing. I don't want to reserve a lineup spot for him, especially with being a later locking game.
Samesies.
All right. Are you all caught up and set on your lineups, Eric? That was a quick hour.
I'm all set, baby. Yeah, that was, super quick. And obviously we got to go down memory lane to start things off with the 23-24 Grizzlies, which have a special place in our DFS hearts as Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams took us to the top. But 33 players played for one basketball team last year. I still can't believe that that's an actual true fact.
Mike1377 asking us in Discord. He wants to know, I know Phil Senzig asked us, is Bradley Beal going to be a Jergens or bust? But then Mike1377 just straight up wants to know, who is the lotion play of the night? He wants to know, Eric, who's going to fill it up tonight? Who's going to put the ball in the basket?
Oh, in the what?
Who's going to put the ball in the basket?
I thought you were going to say in the Yeah, who's going to play?
You're having sex wrong. You're going to say what I thought you were.
We're going to go to Desmond Bain. The Gotham's Reckoning.
Yeah, I mean, Desmond Bain, clearly a really strong one. Let's see. I'll go somewhere else then. Who's a pay up I'm getting a lot of? I kind of have to give the same one as you as with Desmond Bain. I just don't, there isn't another player who's a pay up option that I have nearly as much exposure as I do to Desmond Bain.
Yeah,
like
Desmond
Triple
Bain.
J also would be somebody a consideration, but I have other, like, I don't want to give out my 5th most rostered Memphis player.
Fair. That's nice of you. That's nice of you.
How many players from Memphis do you have at least 20% exposure to?
Oh, God, this is fun. Now that I have everything in, I've got Scottie Pippen Jr., I've got John Conchar, Jay Huff, Sharon Jackson Jr., Luke Kennard, Jalen Wells. So 6. 7. Desmond Bain, obviously. So 7.
Yeah, same. And the same 7 for me. 7 players from Memphis Grizzlies that I have over 20% exposure to. Guys, if you haven't done it yet, do us a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and don't forget to go check out the Portfolio EV sale. Because if you guys are sports betting and you are not using Portfolio EV, I really do think you're leaving yourselves some money on the table. Even if you have your own ways that you like to bet, you might as well add some extra volume to the game as well. Promo code EV25 to get yourself 75% off. Got about 60 seconds left here, Eric. Any final thoughts on the slate or anything you're going to be looking out for post-lock?
No, I'll just, kind of romanticize all that was 2024. We really appreciate it. We had 100K on this channel. I remember being on a show with Josh 3 years ago when we hit 50K, and it was a big, big deal. And it was a lot of fun. But behind the scenes, we've obviously had a lot of things going on. Like, I don't know, Jordan Klein just being a terrible producer who zooms in on a fax machine every single time when I'm trying to do a nice speech. But you know what? I'm going to keep doing this speech anyway, because it's very important. We appreciate you guys tuning in every single Monday through Friday in the NBA streets. We appreciate you every single Sunday and NFL Live Before Lock. And damn it, 2025 is going to be even bigger, even greater. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell. Hell yeah. Happy New Year.
I would like to see more of the fax machine being zoomed in on. I think that's how we should. There's no better way to close. The only way that would be better to close out the year right now is if Eric's dad got a fax as Jordan was zooming in on it. If there's no way that we could manufacture that, but if that did happen to close out the year, I mean, how epic would it be about absolutely nothing? So guys, thank you very much for watching. Happy New Year. Have a good night. Be safe, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Good night.